Ambassador Jake Turner wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stood in the massive council chamber of the Kexathi Empire. The room sparkled like the inside of a diamond, with walls made of some kind of crystal that made everything look a bit blue. He had been here many times over the past 6 months trying to make peace. Now those papers in his hands felt worthless. The Kexathi towered over him. They looked like giant insects that walked on 2 legs, with hard shells instead of skin and eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. Their leader, Supreme Leader Cathax, stood at the center of a raised platform. His shell was black as night, and when he moved, it made clicking sounds that echoed through the chamber. "Human Ambassador Turner," Cathax said, his voice sounding like metal scraping against metal. "We grow tired of your stalling. Our people demand action. You have failed to meet even our simplest demands." Jake kept his face calm, even though his heart was racing. He had been trained for moments like this. The art of diplomacy was knowing when to push forward and when to step back. Right now, he needed to buy time. "Supreme Leader, surely we can find middle ground," Jake said, his voice steady. "The colonies you speak of were established before we knew your territory extended that far." Cathax's mandibles clicked angrily. The sound reminded Jake of scissors, cutting through paper. "Your ignorance is not our concern. 2 of our sacred worlds have been defiled by your presence. Millions of your people settle on lands that belong to us." The other Kexathi council members shifted in their seats. Each one represented a different part of their empire, and all of them looked ready for war. Their armor-like bodies gleamed under the harsh lighting, and their multiple arms twitched with barely contained anger. Jake felt his communication device vibrate silently against his wrist. He didn't need to look at it to know what it meant. He had been waiting for this signal for weeks. Still, he had to play his part perfectly. "Perhaps if you could give us more time to relocate our people," Jake suggested, knowing full well the answer. Cathax slammed one of his forearms against the podium. The bang echoed through the chamber. "No more time, no more words. The Kexathi Empire demands Earth's complete surrender. You will serve us, or you will be destroyed." Jake took a deep breath. He had known it would come to this. For months he had tried everything. Offering trade agreements, proposing shared research projects, even suggesting marriage alliances between their species. But the Kexathi wanted only one thing: complete control over humanity. "Supreme Leader, war would benefit neither of our peoples," Jake said, spreading his hands in a gesture of peace. "Your kind is weak," Cathax sneered. "You abandoned the ways of war generations ago. Your ships carry no weapons. Your people know nothing of battle. You are merchants and scholars, nothing more." Jake smiled slightly. It was exactly what he wanted them to think. The Kexathi had studied human history, but they had misunderstood everything. They saw humanity's commitment to peace as weakness, their diplomatic approach as fear. The device on his wrist vibrated again, this time with a different pattern. Package Omega deployed. ETA 12 minutes. Jake's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. 12 minutes. He could talk for 12 minutes. "You speak of weakness," Jake said, his voice growing stronger. "But our strength lies in our ability to find solutions without violence. Surely the great Kexathi Empire understands the value of wisdom over brute force." One of the council members, a green-shelled female named Takara, leaned forward. "Your words are empty, human. Your colonies have already fallen to our forces. Your fleet retreats at the mere sight of our ships. What wisdom is there in surrender?" Jake's mind worked quickly. The Kexathi were proud. They loved to boast about their victories. If he could get them talking about their conquests, it would eat up valuable time. "Tell me then," Jake said, "of your great victories. Perhaps understanding your strength will help me convince my government to accept your terms." Cathax straightened, his chest swelling with pride. "Our forces struck your colonies with precision and power. The humans on New Hope fell within hours. Those on Eden's Gate lasted only slightly longer. Your defensive forces were laughable." Jake nodded, appearing to be impressed. Inside, he was counting seconds. Each moment brought his real message closer to delivery. "And your fleet?" Jake prompted. I heard rumors of a battle near the Orion Nebula. Another council member, this one with red markings on his shell, spoke up. Battle? It was no battle. Your ships fled like frightened prey. We destroyed 3 of your largest vessels without losing a single fighter. Jake fought to keep his expression neutral. The ships they spoke of had been decoys, filled with automated systems designed to gather data on Kexathi weapons and tactics. Everything was going according to plan. Impressive, Jake said. Your military might is truly remarkable. Cuthax clicked his mandibles again, this time in what seemed like satisfaction. Now you understand, human. Resistance is futile. Accept our terms or watch your homeworld burn. Jake's device vibrated once more. Package approaching target zone. I must ask you to reconsider one last time, Jake said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline now pumping through his system. Is there truly no path to peace? Cuthax's compound eyes narrowed. Peace will come when humanity bows before the Kexathi Empire. You have had 6 months to understand this simple truth. Now you will learn it through force. The council members began to rise from their seats, clearly considering the negotiations over. Jake took a step back, his hands still, visible and empty. He needed just a few more minutes. Wait, Jake called out. Before you end these talks, I must inform my government of your final decision. Protocol requires. Suddenly the lights in the chamber flickered. It was subtle, barely noticeable. But Jake saw several of the guards shift uncomfortably. Their antennae twitched, sensing something was wrong. Cuthax paused, his head tilting slightly. What is happening? Jake kept his face perfectly innocent. I'm not sure, Supreme Leader. Perhaps a power fluctuation. The lights flickered again, more noticeably. This time, a low hum began to build throughout the chamber like distant thunder growing closer. Guards! Cuthax barked. Check the systems. Several armored Kexathi rushed out of the chamber. Jake remained where he was, watching the growing confusion with carefully hidden satisfaction. Everything was happening exactly on schedule. The hum grew louder, accompanied by a subtle vibration that Jake could feel through the crystalline floor. The Kexathi council members began clicking at each other in their native language, clearly agitated. Jake checked his chronometer discreetly. The package would be in position now. Years of planning, months of failed negotiations, countless lives. Lost on those colonies, it all came down to this moment. Supreme Leader, Jake said, raising his voice to be heard over the growing noise. Perhaps we should continue this discussion once your technicians have resolved whatever is causing this disturbance? Cuthax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. You! What have you done? Jake met the alien's compound eyes steadily. I've done nothing, Supreme Leader. I'm just a diplomat, remember? We humans gave up our warlike ways long ago. The sarcasm in his voice was impossible to miss. For the first time, Jake saw something like uncertainty in Cuthax's posture. The Kexathi leader's antennae were moving frantically, trying to detect the source of the disturbance. Another message buzzed against Jake's wrist. Package active. Stand by for fireworks. Jake allowed himself a small smile. The fireworks were about to begin, and the Kexathi were about to learn why pushing humanity past the point of diplomacy was the worst mistake any species could make. Major Lisa Hayes pulled herself through the narrow maintenance shaft, her black combat suit blending perfectly with the darkness around her. Behind her, 12 members of humanity's most secret military unit followed in complete silence. The metal tunnel was cramped and hot, but they moved with practiced ease. They had entered the Kexathi flagship through a waste disposal port that nobody watched. The aliens had grown too confident, too sure that humans posed no threat. That was their first mistake. Lisa checked her wrist display. The tiny screen showed the layout of the ship and their target locations. Everything was going according to plan. They had trained for this mission for months, studying every detail of Kexathi technology and biology. Team 1. Status, she whispered through her neural link. The communication device was implanted directly in her brain, allowing silent communication with her squad. "In position outside engine room," came the reply from Sergeant Mike Johnson. "No hostiles detected." Team 2, approaching bridge access point, reported Corporal Amy Chen. "Security systems bypassed." Lisa nodded to herself. Her people were the best. Each one had undergone years of secret training that officially didn't exist. According to public records, humanity had disbanded all military forces 2 centuries ago. The truth was much different. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber filled with glowing conduits and humming machinery. Lisa held up her hand, signaling her team to stop. She activated her helmet's enhanced vision mode, scanning for threats. 2. Kexathi technicians were working on a control panel nearby. They hadn't noticed the humans yet. Lisa made a quick hand signal. 2 of her team members, Private Danny Rodriguez and Specialist Karen White, moved forward like shadows. In seconds, both aliens were unconscious on the floor. No blood, no noise, just precise nerve strikes that would leave them sleeping for hours. The team's medical training included extensive study of Kexathi anatomy for exactly this purpose. "Clear," Danny whispered. Lisa led her team into the chamber. They moved to different positions, each person knowing exactly what to do. Years of practice made their actions automatic. "Plant the disruptors," Lisa ordered. Her team pulled small devices from their packs. These quantum disruptors were humanity's secret weapon, designed specifically to counter Kexathi technology. When activated, they would create a field that disrupted the aliens' shield systems. The Kexathi believed their shields were unbeatable. They had never lost a ship in battle because of them. They didn't know that human scientists had spent decades studying captured Kexathi technology, finding weaknesses that could be exploited. Lisa placed her own disruptor against a main power conduit. The device attached itself magnetically. She pressed a sequence of buttons arming it. "Device armed," she reported. "Timer set for 15 minutes. Similar reports came from her team members as they placed disruptors throughout the chamber. Each device would activate simultaneously, creating a cascading failure that would bring down the entire shield system. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the ship. Red lights began flashing. "They've detected something," Karen said. Lisa remained calm. "Stick to the plan. Team 1, status?" "Charges set in engine room," Mike reported. "Moving to secondary target." Team 2, bridge security neutralized, Amy responded. "Accessing command systems now." Lisa smiled behind her faceplate. The alarm was actually a good sign. It meant the diplomatic meeting was reaching its planned conclusion. Jake Turner had done his job perfectly, keeping the Kexathi leadership distracted while the real operation unfolded. "Move to exit point," Lisa ordered. "We have 10 minutes." Her team withdrew from the chamber as silently as they had entered. They passed several groups of confused Kexathi rushing through the corridors. The aliens didn't even glance at the shadows moving past them. That was the beauty of human special forces technology. Their suits bent light around them, making them nearly invisible. Combined with sound dampening and thermal masking, they were ghosts aboard the enemy ship. As they moved, Lisa monitored the other team's progress. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The engine room charges would cripple the flagship's propulsion. The bridge team was uploading a virus that would spread through the entire Kexathi fleet. They reached an intersection where 6 Kexathi soldiers stood guard. Unlike the technicians, these warriors were alert and armed. Their compound eyes scanned constantly, their weapons ready. Lisa signaled her team to halt. She studied the guards' positions and movements. There was no way around them without being detected. "Neurotoxin?" Karen suggested through the neural link. Lisa shook her head slightly. "Too risky. We need them conscious for the message to spread." She made a decision. "Flash and clear, on my mark." Her team readied themselves. Lisa counted down silently. 3, 2, 1. A small sphere rolled across the floor toward the guards. They turned toward it just as it activated. The flash was specifically calibrated to overload Kexathi visual receptors without damaging them permanently. The guards staggered, temporarily blinded. Lisa's team moved in fast. Each human targeted a specific alien, using precise strikes to disable without killing. In 5 seconds, all 6 guards were down, groaning but alive. "Keep moving," Lisa ordered. They were close to their extraction point now. The maintenance shaft they had used to enter connected to a storage bay on the ship's outer hull. A stealth shuttle waited there, ready to take them back to their hidden base. Lisa's wrist display showed 5 minutes until the disruptors activated. They needed to be clear of the ship before that happened. As they entered the storage bay, Lisa received a priority message from command. She stopped to read it while her team secured the area. "Package Omega activated," the message read. "Diplomatic cover maintained. Execute final phase." Lisa smiled. Package Omega referred to their entire operation. The fact that Jake had maintained his cover meant the Kexathi still believed he was just a diplomat. They had no idea that he had been coordinating this mission from the beginning. "Final phase confirmed," she replied. Her team reached the stealth shuttle without incident. As they strapped in for departure, Lisa took one last look at the Kexathi flagship through the viewport. In a few minutes, its shields would fail. Its engines would die. Its weapons would go offline, and across the galaxy, every Kexathi ship would experience the same fate. The shuttle detached silently from the hull and moved away using minimal power. They had to stay undetected until they were clear of the combat zone. Lisa watched her chronometer count down the final seconds. When it reached 0, she held her breath. Nothing seemed to happen at first. Then, slowly, the blue glow of the Kexathi shields began to flicker. The massive flagship pride of their empire started to list to one side as its stabilizers failed. "Direct hit," the shuttle pilot reported. "All systems affected." Lisa nodded with satisfaction. The quantum disruptors had worked perfectly. Years of research and development had paid off in this moment. "Take us home," she ordered. As the shuttle accelerated away from the crippled flagship, Lisa allowed herself a moment of pride. Her team had executed their mission flawlessly. No casualties, no detection, no evidence left behind. The Kexathi would spend years trying to understand what had happened to their invincible fleet. They would never find the answer because humanity had perfected the art of invisible warfare. This was why human special forces only appeared when diplomacy failed. Because when they did appear, the battle was already over before the enemy knew it had begun. Lisa activated her communication link one last time. "Command, this is Shadow Team. Mission accomplished. The Empire has fallen." The reply came immediately. "Well done, Shadow Team. Welcome back to the darkness." Lisa leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, Jake Turner would continue his diplomatic efforts with a suddenly cooperative Kexathi leadership. The galaxy would see another triumph of human negotiation. Only a select few would know the truth. Humanity hadn't abandoned warfare. They had simply evolved it beyond recognition. The council chamber shook violently as another explosion rocked the Kexathi flagship. Supreme Leader Kathax stumbled, his forearms flailing for balance. The crystal walls that had seemed so magnificent now showed tiny cracks spreading like spiderwebs. Ambassador Jake Turner remained steady on his feet, years of training allowing him to maintain perfect composure. The time for pretending was almost over. "What is happening?" Kathax roared, his mandibles clicking furiously. "Guards!" Report. No response came. The communication systems were down, just as planned. Jake watched as panic spread through the council members. Their compound eyes darted around the chamber, searching for threats they couldn't see. Another tremor shook the ship. This time, the lights went out completely before emergency backup systems kicked in, bathing everything in a dim red glow. "Supreme Leader," Jake said calmly, "it appears your ship is experiencing some technical difficulties." Kathax whirled to face him, all 7 feet of angry alien looming over the human diplomat. "You did this. Somehow you did this." Jake raised his hands in a gesture of innocence. "How could I? I'm just one human, unarmed, standing in your council chamber. Your own security scans confirmed I brought no weapons." Takara, the green-shelled council member moved closer to her leader. The shields are failing across the fleet, she reported, checking a handheld device. All ships report the same malfunction. Impossible, Kathax snarled. Our shields have never failed, Jake allowed, himself a small smile. Never is a very long time, Supreme Leader. Perhaps your technology isn't as perfect as you believed. The deck tilted suddenly as the flagship's stabilizers shut down. Several council members lost their footing, crashing to the floor with sounds like breaking pottery. Jake shifted his weight smoothly, adapting to the new angle. Kathax's antennae twitched frantically as he tried to process what was happening. This is an attack. But how? Your ships are nowhere near us. Are you sure about that? Jake asked. As if in answer, the main viewing screen flickered to life. It showed the space around the Kexathi homeworld, where there had been empty space moments before. Human battle cruisers now appeared, dropping their stealth fields one by one. The human fleet was massive. Hundreds of ships, each one bristling with weapons that had been hidden behind false cargo, holds and civilian markings. They surrounded the planet in perfect formation. No, Kathax whispered. This cannot be. We monitored you. We watched your shipyards. These vessels don't exist. Jake walked forward, his diplomatic bearing replaced by something harder, more military. You watched what we wanted you to see. You believed what we wanted you to believe. The red-marked council member staggered to his feet. But your colonies, we destroyed them. We saw your people die. Did you? Jake asked. Or did you destroy empty buildings filled with very convincing holograms? Did your scanners detect biosignatures that were actually generated by hidden transmitters? Understanding dawned in Kathax's compound eyes. The colonists? They were never there? Evacuated months ago, Jake confirmed. Every single one. We knew you would attack eventually. We just needed you to think you were winning. The viewing screen changed, now showing the Kexathi fleet. Every ship hung motionless in space, their shields down, their weapon systems offline. Small human craft moved among them like insects, attaching devices to their hulls. Boarding pods, Jake explained. Each one carries a team of specialists who will secure your ships. Your crews won't be harmed if they surrender peacefully. Kathax slammed his fists against a console, cracking its surface. This is impossible. Humans abandoned warfare. You have no military. Your own history says so. Jake's laugh was cold. Our history says we chose peace. It never said we forgot how to wage war. He pulled a small device from his pocket, one that had been disguised as a ceremonial pin on his uniform. With a press of a button, his formal ambassador's attire shifted, revealing the dark uniform of a military commander underneath. Commander Jake Turner, Human Special Operations. He introduced himself properly. The diplomatic credentials were real, by the way. We always try talking first. The council chamber doors burst open. Kexathi guards rushed in, weapons raised. But they stopped short, staring in confusion at what they saw. Behind Jake, figures appeared out of thin air as their stealth suits deactivated. 12 human soldiers in advanced combat armor stood ready, weapons trained on the guards. They had been in the chamber the entire time, invisible and silent. I suggest you order your guards to stand down, Jake said to Kathax. My people have already secured the critical systems of this ship. Resistance would be unwise. Kathax's mandibles worked soundlessly for a moment. Finally, he raised one arm in a gesture of surrender. The guards lowered their weapons. How? Takara asked, her voice barely a whisper. How did you hide such power? Jake gestured to the soldiers behind him. These men and women don't exist on any official record. Their training facilities are hidden on moons and asteroids that appear uninhabited. Their equipment is manufactured in secret factories beneath major cities. We maintain the illusion of peace while preparing for war. But why? Kathax demanded. Why not simply conquer? With such power, you could rule the galaxy. Jake's expression softened slightly. Because we know the cost of war. We fought enough battles in our history to understand that true strength lies in restraint. We choose diplomacy not from weakness but from wisdom. The ship shuddered again as human engineers took control of its primary systems. Through the viewing screen, they could see Kexathi vessels being carefully moved into holding patterns by human crews. Your empire attacked us because you saw our commitment to peace as vulnerability, Jake continued. That was your greatest mistake. We mastered warfare so completely that we chose to abandon it. But we never forgot our skills. Kethak slumped into his command chair, defeat written across his alien features. What happens now? Now? Jake smiled. Now we return to diplomacy. Your empire will sign a treaty acknowledging human sovereignty. You will pay reparations for the attacks on our colonies, and you will spread word to every species in the galaxy about what happens when humanity is pushed too far. And if we refuse? Jake's smile vanished. Then you'll learn why we keep our warriors hidden, why we maintain the illusion of weakness. Because when human special forces are revealed, it means all other options have failed. And when that happens, we don't leave enemies behind to try again. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Kethax looked at the human soldiers, at their advanced weapons and armor, at the calm certainty in their eyes. He thought of his helpless fleet, his defenseless planet. We will sign your treaty, he said finally. Jake nodded. A wise choice. He turned to one of his soldiers. Signal the fleet. Stand down from combat status but maintain position, and get me a secure line to Earth. The President will want to know that diplomacy has resumed. As his team moved to carry out orders, Jake returned his attention to the defeated Kexathi leadership. Shall we begin negotiations? I believe we have much to discuss about the future relationship between our peoples. The council members exchanged glances, then slowly nodded. They had learned their lesson. Human diplomacy wasn't weakness to be exploited. It was mercy to be appreciated, and behind every human diplomat stood warriors who had mastered the art of war so completely that they preferred never to use it. The news spread across the Kexathi Empire like wildfire. In homes and hatcheries, on space stations and mining outposts, every screen showed the same image, their mighty fleet hanging helpless above their homeworld, surrounded by human ships that had appeared from nowhere. Captain Andrew Chen stood on the bridge of the lead human battlecruiser, the USS Constellation. His crew worked with perfect efficiency, monitoring every Kexathi vessel in the system. The quantum disruptors had done their job flawlessly. Status report, he ordered. All enemy shields remain down. Lieutenant Sarah Park replied from her station. Their weapon systems show no signs of recovery. Engineering teams report successful installation of control modules on 70% of their capital ships. Andrew nodded. The control modules would allow human operators to pilot the Kexathi ships if necessary. It was a safeguard against any last-minute attempts at resistance. Sir, Communications Officer David Lee called out, we're receiving a system-wide broadcast from the Kexathi leadership. Put it through. The main screen shifted to show Supreme Leader Kethax. The once proud alien looked defeated, his antennae drooping, his shell somehow less lustrous than before. People of the Kexathi Empire, Kethax began, his voice carrying none of its former authority. We have made a grave error in judgment. The humans are not the weak, defenseless species we believed them to be. Andrew watched as Kethax continued his speech. The alien leader explained what had happened, how human diplomacy had been a shield, hiding military capabilities beyond anything the Kexathi could imagine. Their warriors move like shadows, Kethax said. Their weapons pierce our strongest defenses. But most frightening of all is their restraint. They could destroy us completely, yet they choose to offer peace. Around the bridge, Andrew's crew listened intently. Many of them had friends and family who had pretended to die in those fake colony attacks. The deception had been necessary but painful. Captain, Lieutenant Park interrupted, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the third moon of the Kexathi homeworld. Andrew frowned. Show me. The screen split, displaying both Kethax's broadcast and sensor data from the moon. Something was happening beneath its surface. It's a military installation, Park reported, hidden underground. They're powering up what looks like a planetary defense cannon. Andrew's expression hardened. So not all the Kexathi had surrendered. Some were still looking for a fight. Target that installation, he ordered. But don't fire yet. Open a channel, to whoever's in charge down there. Moments later, a Kexathi face appeared on screen. Unlike Keithak's, this one wore military markings and radiated defiance. I am War Master Varak, the alien declared. We will not surrender to human tricks and deception. Andrew leaned forward. War Master, I suggest you power down that weapon immediately. We have no desire to harm your people, but we will defend ourselves. Varak's mandibles clicked angrily. You caught us by surprise once, it won't happen again. This cannon can crack a planet's crust. Surrender your fleet or watch your ships burn. Andrew sighed. There was always someone who didn't get the message. He turned to his weapons officer. Lieutenant Kim, demonstration pattern Alpha, 10% power. Aye, sir. A single beam of energy lanced out from the constellation. It struck the moon's surface near the hidden installation, carving a perfectly circular crater half a mile wide. The precision was surgical, the power carefully controlled. That was 1/10 power from one ship, Andrew informed Varak. We have 300 ships in this system. Would you like another demonstration? Varak's compound eyes widened. His defiance crumbled as he realized the truth. The humans weren't just powerful, they were in complete control. Stand down, Varak ordered his troops. The energy signatures from the moon began to fade. Andrew nodded. Wise choice. He closed the channel and returned his attention to Cathax's broadcast. The Kexathi leader was now explaining the terms of surrender. Full recognition of human sovereignty. Reparations for the destroyed colonies. Most importantly, a promise to spread the truth about humanity throughout the galaxy. The humans choose peace, not from weakness, but from strength, Cathax said. They negotiate not because they must, but because they prefer it. And when diplomacy fails, he paused, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. When diplomacy fails, they reveal warriors who have mastered the art of war so completely that victory is assured before the battle begins. Andrew allowed himself a small smile. The message was exactly what they wanted. For too long, other species had mistaken human kindness for vulnerability. Now they would understand. Sir, David Lee spoke up again. We're receiving a priority message from Ambassador Turner. He reports successful conclusion of negotiations. The treaty will be signed within the hour. Excellent, Andrew replied. And our special forces teams? All extracted successfully. No casualties, no evidence left behind. Andrew nodded with satisfaction. The operation had been perfect. Months of planning, years of preparation, all leading to this moment. He thought about the history that had brought humanity to this point. After the last war, when nuclear fire had nearly destroyed Earth, the survivors had made a choice. They would master warfare completely, learn every strategy, develop every weapon, and then they would hide that knowledge away, hoping never to use it. For centuries, it had worked. Humanity had spread across the stars through trade and diplomacy. They had made friends, built alliances, shared knowledge, but they had never forgotten the lessons of the last war. Captain, Lieutenant Park called out, we're detecting celebrations breaking out across the Kexathi homeworld. It seems the population is relieved? Andrew wasn't surprised. Most beings didn't want war. They wanted peace, prosperity, a chance to raise their young in safety. The Kexathi civilians had been fed propaganda about human weakness. Now they were learning the truth. Maintain our position, he ordered, but stand down from combat alert. Let's show them we mean what we say about preferring peace. As his crew carried out his orders, Andrew reflected on what would happen next. The Kexathi would sign the treaty, they would pay reparations, and most importantly, they would spread the word. Don't push the humans too far. Don't mistake their diplomacy for weakness. Because behind every peaceful negotiation stands the most lethal military force in the galaxy, hidden in the shadows, hoping they never have to reveal themselves. The galaxy would learn what the Kexathi had learned today. Human special forces only show up when diplomacy crashes and burns, and by then, it's already too late. "Sir," David Lee said, "Earth Command is requesting a full report." Andrew straightened his uniform. "Tell them mission accomplished. The sheep's clothing remains intact and the wolf has returned to its den." He looked out at the stars, thinking of all the other species who might someday test humanity's patience. They would learn eventually. They all did. Peace through strength. Diplomacy backed by power. It was the human way, and it was why they ruled the galaxy without anyone realizing it. 3 days after the Kexathi surrender, Ambassador Jake Turner sat across from Supreme Leader Cathax in the restored council chamber. The crystal walls had been repaired, the lighting returned to normal. To look at the room, you would never know a battle had taken place here. Jake wore his diplomatic uniform once again. The military commander was gone, hidden away like the warships that had returned to their secret bases. Only a handful of human vessels remained in orbit, painted in civilian colors and broadcasting merchant identification codes. Between them lay the treaty. 300 pages of carefully worded agreements, each one designed to ensure the Kexathi would never again threaten human space. Cathax had already signed it. Now he sat in silence, studying the human who had fooled him so completely. "Your soldiers," Cathax began, his voice quiet. "They moved through our ship like ghosts. We never saw them, never heard them. How long were they among us?" Jake smiled slightly. "They entered with me. My honor guard, though you didn't know it. They stood beside me during every meeting, watched from the shadows during every negotiation." Cathax's antenna twitched. Invisible, impossible to detect, with weapons we couldn't defend against. He paused. "You could have killed us all at any time." "Yes," Jake agreed simply. "But we didn't. That's what you need to understand about humanity. We choose peace, until forced to do otherwise." Takara, who sat beside her leader, leaned forward. "The colonies. We attacked. You said they were empty. But our scanners showed life signs, buildings, defensive systems. Advanced holographic technology," Jake explained, "combined with signal generators that fooled your sensors. We've been preparing for scenarios like this for centuries. When we detected your fleet movements months ago, we evacuated those worlds and set up the deception." "Months ago?" Cathax clicked his mandibles in surprise. "But we only decided to attack 6 weeks past." Jake's smile widened. "We have very good intelligence networks. We knew what you would choose before you did. Every outcome was calculated. Every response prepared." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The Kexathi had thought themselves masters of the galaxy, only to discover they were children playing at war while adults watched. "What happens now?" Cathax asked finally. Jake gestured to the treaty. "Now we rebuild trust. Your empire will honor this agreement. You'll return to your borders, focus on peaceful development, and most importantly, you'll tell others what happened here." "You want us to spread fear of humanity?" "Not fear," Jake corrected. "Understanding. Let the galaxy know that we prefer friendship to conquest, trade to warfare, but also let them know what happens when that preference is ignored." Cathax nodded slowly. "I have sent messages to all our allied species. They will know what we learned here." "Good." Jake stood up, straightening his uniform. "Then our business is concluded. Human merchant ships will resume trade with your empire next month. Our diplomatic missions will reopen. Life will return to normal." "Normal?" Takara asked. "After what we've seen?" "A new normal," Jake acknowledged. "One where you understand the truth about humanity. We're not weak. We're not defenseless. We're the most dangerous species in the galaxy precisely because we choose not to be." As Jake turned to leave, Cathax called out one last question. "The Special Forces, where do they go now?" Jake paused at the door. "What Special Forces? Earth maintains no military. We're a peaceful species dedicated to diplomacy and trade." His eyes met Cathax's compound gaze, and in that moment, the alien understood perfectly. The warriors would vanish back into shadow. The weapons would be hidden away and humanity would return to its role as peaceful merchants, until the next time someone made the mistake of pushing them too far. "We will remember this lesson," Kathak said solemnly. "See that you do," Jake replied, "because next time, we might not leave anyone alive to learn it." Days later, aboard a civilian transport ship returning to Earth, Jake Turner received an encrypted message. It came from a source that didn't officially exist, using channels that weren't on any record. Package Omega success rate 100%. All units extracted. No evidence remaining. Council impressed with diplomatic resolution. Await next assignment. Jake deleted the message immediately. In his official report, he would describe a tense negotiation that ended peacefully when the Kexathi recognized human determination. There would be no mention of special forces, no hint of military action. The other passengers on the transport saw only a tired diplomat returning from a successful mission. They didn't notice the slight bulge under his jacket where a military-grade neural interface was hidden. They couldn't see the scars from combat modifications that enhanced his strength and reflexes. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were watching, learning. From the Kexathi example, the message would spread. Humanity prefers peace, but they excel at war. In hidden bases across the galaxy, soldiers like Lisa Hayes trained endlessly for missions they hoped would never come. Engineers developed weapons that would never be seen until needed. Intelligence officers monitored potential threats, calculating responses to scenarios years in advance. This was the true face of humanity. Not the merchants and diplomats that other species saw, but the warriors who moved in shadow. They were the reason human colonies flourished across the galaxy. They were the shield that protected Earth's interests. Jake thought of something his grandfather had told him years ago, back when he was first recruited into the program. The best warriors are the ones who never have to fight. The strongest weapon is the one that stays sheathed. Humanity had learned that lesson the hard way, through centuries of devastating wars. Now they applied it on a galactic scale. They showed the galaxy their peaceful face while keeping their warrior heart hidden. As the transport continued toward Earth, Jake closed his eyes and allowed himself to rest. Another crisis averted. Another war prevented. Another species taught. The most important lesson of all: human special forces only show up when diplomacy crashes and burns, and by then, the battle is already over. The galaxy was at peace, maintained by the invisible hand of Earth's hidden guardians. And that's exactly how humanity wanted it. The intercom crackled to life. "Attention passengers, we'll be arriving at Earth Station Prime in approximately 4 hours. Please prepare for customs inspection." Jake smiled. Customs would find nothing suspicious about him. His diplomatic credentials were impeccable. His record showed nothing but peaceful negotiations. The wolf returned to its sheep's clothing once more, content in the knowledge that the flock was safe, until the next predator made the fatal mistake of thinking humans were prey. The cycle would continue. Diplomacy first, always. But behind every handshake, every treaty, every peaceful agreement stood the warriors who ensured those words carried weight. This was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Peace through strength, mercy through power, civilization, maintained by those who had mastered the art of war so completely they rarely needed to use it. And that was why human special forces only showed up when diplomacy crashed and burned. Because by then, it was already too late for their enemies to learn any other way.